Sergeant's Report, March 2026. 5 years. 5 long years. That's how long it took for Halo Infinite to get its final content update. First it was going well, then setback after setback. Loss after loss. Made what was going to be a triumphant return to form into 5 years of hell. Ahoy there! In the early years of my channel, I was in my Halo phase. I recorded gameplay of the Master Chief Collection custom games where I played with friends, or acquaintances at the very least. Nobody watched those, but I didn't care because I was having fun. So when Halo Infinite's multiplayer shadow dropped on the 20-year anniversary of Halo Combat Evolved, and also the 20-year anniversary of the Xbox, I was excited seeing the neo-classic art style evoking Halo games of old. And then the floor came off. I stuck with Halo Infinite for a few years, with 2 different graphics cards on my PC carrying the weight of this busted game. I got mad. I got frustrated. I occasionally took things out on my keyboard. By the start of 2024, I called it quits due to all the stress it was causing. Well, here we are only a few years later, with Campaign Evolved coming out in 2026, and the final major update releasing in mid-November of 2025. Knowing that this may be the last time I play Infinite, I decided to reinstall the game and lay this whole Infinite saga to rest. I challenged myself to play the multiplayer for 30 days, starting with the launch of the final update. Now that the month of playtime is over, on top of wasting 2 months trying to film something I wasn't prepared for, it's time I discuss my final opinions on Halo Infinite multiplayer. Has this game redeemed itself like many other live service games? The history of Halo Infinite is one that could be its own video essay, but the actual Halo YouTubers are way more qualified to discuss it than I am, so I'm just going to go over an abridged history of the multiplayer. Things kicked off with a tech preview in summer of 2021, which proved that not only were there some gremlins lurking in the supposedly new Slipspace engine, but that it couldn't run smoothly on a GPU like my old GTX 1660 Super, let alone an RTX 3060. There were things like wet floor signs duplicating themselves when bumped. On the 20th anniversary of both Halo Combat Evolved and the Xbox, Microsoft shadow dropped the multiplayer suite and everyone was playing it. Until they weren't, but more on that later. At the launch of the multiplayer was Season 1, Heroes of Reach, themed around Halo Reach armor, with most of it being unobtainable without buying the premium track of the Battle Pass. There was no Forge, no Infection, and no casual modes to play. About 1 month later, the full-price campaign launched with some additional cosmetics to find. Season 2, Lone Wolves, came out in April of 2022, beginning the short-lived pseudo-narrative of the multiplayer. Something about a pair of Spartans extracting a banished AI with one of them being left comatose. Forge wouldn't be arriving for another 6 months, and my frustration with the game started to boil over. This led me to taking a sabbatical from the game until later, meaning I missed out on the Entrenched Fracture and Last Spartan Standing in matchmaking. But I'll be honest, I don't care for Battle Royale. That ship has sailed. The winter update around October is what pulled me back into the game for 2 reasons. 1, my beloved CQB helmet returned in the 100% free pass, and 2, Forge was back! My hands were busy for the next few months as I learned how to grasp the controls on mouse and keyboard. I would only ever publish 2 maps to the game, and unsurprisingly, neither of them made much of a splash. Season 3, Echoes Within, was a season I was excited about. Not for the sandbox editions, because who celebrates the addition of a precision weapon? No, I was excited for the addition of Mirage 2C armor. While I couldn't have my preferred purple and orange color combo, I could have the next best thing, the Purple Sun armor coating. In my quest to obtain the coating, I spent time cosplaying as a Kamen Rider character, even though I know next to nothing about Tokusatsu. Season 3's story had the player investigate a hidden Oni site under the live fire map, when Iratus, the banished AI that was captured, breaks containment and begins infecting Spartans with a computer virus. Sadly, this would be the last story event for the game because Microsoft decided to lay off the story team during Season 3. Season 4 belonged to Infection with, well, Infection. The computer virus skew to the classic Halo game mode was a fun twist with the game's announcer aware of the situation.
I only had one job.
This season didn't resonate all that well with me because of all the behind-the-scenes crap that was happening at Microsoft. The build-up to Infection was cool, but then that was it from a story standpoint. No more in-game narrative events. The final season of the traditional season format was Season 5, Reckoning. The Flood returned in cosmetic form, and we finally got lore as to what happens when a Spartan is infected by the Flood. It was an update that was just in time for Halloween that year. However, the Battle Pass was cut in half to 50 tiers, with 25 tiers available for cheapskates. In December, Firefight made its triumphant return with Firefight King of the Hill. Warzone and Halo 5 didn't suit Firefight very well, but combining King of the Hill with PvE worked out very well. After Season 5, Halo Studios switched from seasons to what they call operations. They're the same as the events they sprinkled in during each season, each offering their own passes and sets of unlockables, and reminders why we can't have nice things. There's too many operations to discuss in a short amount of time, so I have them listed here. Right now, the final operation is Infinite. It's a 100-tier battle pass that features some Banished-themed cosmetics and mounds of the Spartan points currency used in the exchange. Since this is most likely the final operation pass, I wouldn't be concerned about buying it to make it permanent. Now, before I went back to making this video, I called it quits during the Operation Banished Honor in 2024. I had grown tired of the game's instability and sweaty nature. I quit being a Spartan and took the oath of enlistment to join the Helldivers. But then I had my oath revoked this year and was labeled a dissident. I had really hoped for Halo Studios to do more with the multiplayer going into their final year with it, but Microsoft gutted more of the studio in 2025, taking away resources that had already been spread thin. Knowing Microsoft, they probably replaced them with robots. The layoffs seem like it accelerated the end of support for the game, but now there won't be a replacement in sight since there will be no multiplayer included with Campaign Evolved. There's word that the next new Halo will be multiplayer only, but that's only rumor, so take it with a grain of salt. What good is multiplayer if you don't have good maps to play them on? Well, sadly, good developer-made maps are few and far between. So let's take a tour of the maps made by Halo Studios themselves, that weren't made in Forge. Aquarius is a symmetrical indoor map set in a UNSC terraforming facility. It's packed with tight corridors perfect for close quarters combat and grenade spam. This one's okay, though running through the middle makes me feel like I'm not wearing pants. Bazaar was one of the first maps shown off to players and was one of the first maps I played in the tech preview. It's a symmetrical urban map set in Old Mombasa. This is a decent Slayer map that also works for Capture the Flag. I don't hate this one. Behemoth is a wide-open map set in an arid, elevated structure on Installation 07. This is one of the 2 maps in the game that does not work with 4-player teams. It's too big and too wide open. FPS maps with too much open space are generally bad, and that holds true for this elephant in the room. Catalyst is a symmetrical Forerunner map set over a waterfall. By the way, you're gonna be hearing me say symmetrical a lot in this segment. This map kinda reminds me of Epitaph from Halo 3, only with a large bottomless pit in the center and a catwalk with 2 opening doors. This map epitomizes Ring Around the Rosie combat, where you're always rotating in a circle. This one's also okay. Chasm is yet another symmetrical Forerunner map, only this time it's like a spiritual successor to Boarding Action from Combat Evolved. That map was directly cited by HS as an inspiration for Chasm. That and a segment from the campaign. There are plenty of long walkways over another bottomless pit, making this map a sniper's dream. It's a bad map, but in a good way. Cliffhanger is a mountainous map with UNSC structures, and somewhere I can hear Sylvester Stallone shouting. Anyway, this map makes for good Slayer action, team or no team. Most scraps are settled in the Hex basement, with another point of interest being a man cannon that leads to the sniper rifle spawn. Forbidden is, surprise surprise, another symmetrical Forerunner map, this one taking place in an abandoned temple-like structure. From an aesthetic standpoint, this reminds me of FPS maps of yesteryear, and I love it for that. Oh, and the fact that you can find a golden sandwich in the Infection variant of this map. Forest is, well, set in a forest with some Forerunner temple structure around it. I like the idea, but visibility is a huge problem on this map thanks to all the tree shadows and foliage. There used to be an Evangelion Easter egg on this map in one of the carvings, but it seems to have been removed in a recent update. Either that or I just wasn't looking hard enough. I don't like this map. Illusion is a symmetrical UNSC map set in an Oni research facility. As a cool bit of world building, this is in the same complex as the Cliffhanger map. One of the doors is likely an elevator to here. This is a fun casual map because the center of the map has a permanent active camo corridor in the center lane. It definitely spruces up small-scale CTF. I love this map. Launch Site is not a remake of Countdown from Halo Reach. Oh man. This is another one of those large, small maps in matchmaking. It's too big for 4v4, but it's also too small for big team battle. Most matches are determined by whoever gets in one of the vehicles. Heaven forbid there's a Scorpion or Banshee spawn. It's no fun in 4v4, but it works better in 8v8 squad battle. I don't like this horseshoe of a map. Live Fire is a UNSC map set in the Avery J. Johnson Academy of Military Sciences. This map played a huge role in the pseudo-narrative of the multiplayer from Season 2 to Season 4, for the 3 or 4 people who cared about it.
They say that someone with a terrible Russian accent lives beyond this door.
Don't be stupid, that's not what happened.
Send help, comrade, and maybe some vodka.
Not vodka! Food! This map makes for some good rounds of Slayer and King of the Hill. Prism is set in the Blamite mines of Suban, which is the place where Needler ammo comes from. This map has a gimmick in which there are formations of Blamite sticking out of the ground that can be shot. Hitting these not only cause some needles to pop out and hit the closest target, but also cause that cluster to explode. Ah, son of a bitch! This one's good for Slayer. Recharge is an asymmetric UNSC map set inside a water treatment facility. This was actually one of the first maps shown off for this game. This map is centered around CQC with a couple of sniper spots, but it also has that one spot by the power weapon spawn where you can use a repulsor to send some poor sap to a watery grave. I'm indifferent about this map. Streets takes place in New Mombasa between a train station and a police station. This is one of the maps I saw played most in the HCS because it checks all the boxes that pro players like in their maps. Which boxes they are, I couldn't tell you. All I know is, watch for flying grenades. Now for the large maps designed for big team battle, starting with Breaker. Breaker is a semi-symmetrical BTB map set in a banished shipbreaking yard. This map reminds me a lot of Two Fort from Team Fortress 2, except that the moat is lava and there's a big scary laser in the middle. This really could have been the Two Fort of Halo Infinite if it weren't for one itsy bitsy teeny weeny little insignificant issue. And that's that CTF play was ruined by Halo Studios in an effort to speed up pace of play. Who in their right mind puts flags within arm's reach of no man's land? There's 2 bases for a reason. It's like the Manfred Mann rule in extra innings of baseball. Deadlock is an asymmetric map set by a large banished anti-air gun pointing right at a UNSC frigate. This is one of the few BTB maps to use shade turrets, which is very effective at countering vehicles like the Banshees. Not so great for heavies because Wraiths eat them up. In my mind, this is the best map for the total control mode. feeling almost like those conquest modes in Battlefield or classic Star Wars Battlefront. I actually put on some Battlefront music when playing this map and mode, and it felt great. The map itself kinda sucks though. Fragmentation is an evolution of the classic 2 Forerunner bases in a box canyon formula started with Blood Gulch and Valhalla. This map takes more after the latter since one of the bases is set over a cliff face. The map is mostly symmetrical, with the center of the map being what I call the House of Pain. It's an intersection where power weapons spawn that both teams are always going to fight for. Off to the sides are loot caves, where you can gain access to more power weapons if you're patient enough to hack into it. And who can forget grabbing a fusion coil from the base and throwing it into an area of heavy traffic, hoping that some poor sucker wanders into it? This is, in my opinion, the best BTB map. High Power is another bases in a canyon map taking place in a UNSC power plant. To that extent, the mode Stockpile was basically made with this map in mind, obviously because of the 2 power structures. However, Stockpile as a mode sucked, warranting its removal from matchmaking. The map also sucks to play on because of the presence of the Wasp and Falcon. Wasps will just mow you down, and the Falcon is a big FU if someone gets on the grenade launcher. It's not the worst BTB map, but it certainly isn't the best. Oasis is a symmetrical map set in a UNSC research facility overlooking a Forerunner terraforming ship. This is not a great map for objective-based modes due to all the wide open space outdoors. I almost always avoid going outside on this map because it's a free fire zone. Yet in spite of that, I don't actively hate this map. Scar is a symmetrical map set in a banished mining facility. This is the BTB equivalent of Ring Around the Rosie combat since the map is one big circle. Players effectively fight over control of the mining platform in the center since that's where one of the power weapons spawn. This is also an okay map for CTF. All in all, Halo Infinite has 20 dev-made maps in total. And that's not counting Forge maps that were added to matchmaking. I'm not opposed to a lower quantity of maps, but the maps need to be of good quality if I'm going to be playing on them over and over again. Maybe I was expecting more given the live service free-to-play nature of the game. Instead, Halo Studios made Forge and let the community have at it. While Forge is ironically the most in-depth version of the map editor yet, it has a steep learning curve and occasionally bugs out. My issue with Infinite's maps is like my issue with TF2's maps. The devs gave up and started curating community maps instead. This wouldn't be an issue if the maps were fun to play on, but there's just one problem. They're all the pit! Look, I get it. The Pit is one of the best maps from Halo 3. I don't need to see a Neon Pit or 2 Asia Pits. With Forge maps, they feel almost lifeless despite the work and effort that went into them. It always feels like something's missing. Also with Forge maps, I'm always dreading the one match where some Forge prop gets corrupted and obscures your vision in a sea of triangles. Thankfully, however, I never encountered that issue in the month I played. At least, not on Forge maps. The arsenal of Halo Infinite is a blend of old and new, with most weapons debuting in this game. Other weapons are reworks of older weapons, giving them a new twist. So why do I not like most of them? Let's take a look at each weapon one by one and see. The MA-40 assault rifle is the jack-of-all-trades, master-of-none weapon. It closely resembles the MA-37 AR from Reach, but has 4 more rounds in a mag. That change was carried over from Halo 5. My personal AR is the MA-5B model from the Spirit of Fire operation. The BR-75 battle rifle is a consistently inconsistent precision weapon. It keeps the 3-round burst, but it's either too easy or too hard to get kills with, depending on who you ask. Maybe I just suck at using it. There's a ranked variant of this BR, but I don't play ranked, so I couldn't tell you the differences. The VK-78 Commando is a full auto precision weapon and the first UNSC infantry rifle that has a front mag. This gun never got a chance to shine in PvP since HS nerfed it shortly after launch. However, it's a godsend in firefights since skimmers love to wield these, and drop them when they die. The Mark 50 Sidekick is the first Halo pistol to replace the Magnum, looking like a cross between a 5.7 and a USP Tactical. Mechanically, it's a cross between the Halo 2 Magnum with its rapid fire and the Halo 5 Gunfighter Magnum with its swift handling. Funnily enough, there are 2 weapon models that transform the sidekick into the Halo 3 ODST Auto Mag and the Halo 2 Magnum. The Bulldog is a combat shotgun that has a vertical grip and a drum mag. Compared to the boomsticks of old, it has less raw stopping power, but is still lethal at close range. I never liked this, and it saddens me that we'll never get the old pump-action shotty back. At least not until Campaign Evolved. The sniper rifle is one of the weapons I can never master in any Halo game. Kills in a single headshot or 2 body shots. Leave a get good scrub in the comments. The Hydra was carried over from Halo 5 and got a remodel that put it in line with the MA40. It looks great. It's decent at dealing with light vehicles because of its lock-on alt-fire. HS actually sped up the reload animation of the weapon since the last time I played, so this thing is actually more usable now. The Spanker is the 2-shot rocket launcher we all know and love. Its blast radius is a bit funky though, owing to the shifty netcode. The M392 Bandit is the Halo Reach DMR, but missing a scope. However, it packs quite a punch. A variant of the Bandit called the Bandit Evo was added later that gave it a holographic sight for mid-range combat. There's too many precision weapons in this game, and I think the Bandit only exacerbated the issue. Last on the UNSC side is the MA5K Avenger. Long teased in Halo media, this carbine is a cross between the CE assault rifle and the SMG. It feels nice to hold a 60-round bullpup weapon again, even if it quickly loses accuracy. Oh, and I guess there's a sandwich. I don't know why, but there's a sandwich.
You are a loose cannon sandwich, but you are a damn good cop.
With the Banished arsenal, we start with the Pulse Carbine. The Pulse Carbine is the bastard child of the Covenant Carbine, Plasma Rifle, and Storm Rifle. It fires in 5-round bursts, with each shot tracking a target if in range. It has its uses, but I actively avoid using this. The Plasma Pistol returns from Halo 5 with the classic overcharge hum returning. At launch, it lacked its ability to EMP vehicles, but you'll understand why in a moment. You can still noob combo to your heart's content. The Needler goes back to basics and now has a neat ammo indicator on the back of the weapon. You can also spike your foes with the needles if you melee them, which is a cool callback to CE. The Stalker rifle is a big red precision rifle, but it's not like the beam rifle. It takes 2 shots to the head to drop someone, but it does have a fire rate comparable to the DMR, or Bandit. The Shock Rifle is a very brutish precision rifle that shoots arcs of electricity. In spite of its smaller scope zoom, it can kill in a single headshot. What? I think the Stalker Rifle and the Shock Rifle should have had their roles reversed. However, the Shock Rifle can EMP vehicles. The introduction of arc damage caused a few balance tweaks, mainly having the Plasma Pistol lose its EMP, until August 2024 when it was restored. The Disruptor is an arc pistol that looks like an alien revolver. If enough shots hit, an arc damage bonus applies, dealing damage over time and disabling vehicles. Sadly, it's not as good as it used to be since this was another weapon HS nerfed to hell and back, but it's also one of those guns that shines in firefights since grunts love to drop these. The Mangler is a true alien revolver with brute blades affixed to them. While it's easy to draw comparisons to the Halo 3 Mauler, the Mangler is not a shotgun. It's banished big iron. It's not meant for long-range fights since its shots are affected by gravity, but you still get the old gun punch combo. The Ravager is the worst weapon in the entire game. It hurls red globs of volatile plasma, but it doesn't fire very far. However, its alt-fire overcharge leaves an area covered in flames that deal damage. It's an area of denial weapon, but it doesn't do enough in terms of damage and utility to be good. The Skewer is a spear gun that tosses a giant spike at a high velocity. It's mainly used as an anti-vehicle device like the Spanker. However, its projectile is affected by gravity. Nailing a Spartan can be tricky, but nailing a vehicle, less so. The Gravity Hammer is the bane of my existence. It's the melee weapon that breaks backs and hearts. It has an enormous kill radius in front of it, meaning that you'll die if you're within 10 feet of a hammer user. HS also half-assed its quick melee animation, in which it's almost the same as its full swing. What happened to the handlebar bash? I hate getting kills with this, and I hate getting killed by it. The Energy Sword is the two-pronged sci-fi sword of death. If you see someone charging at you with one, you'll be lucky if you trade kills. The sword has a trick up its sleeve, though. It can parry other melee weapons. This means it can parry other swords, the Gravity Hammer, and the Mutilator. Speaking of which, the Mutilator was added later in the game's life. It's a double-barreled shotgun with a mini Gravity Hammer up front. Like a human double-barreled shotty, you can fire one or both barrels at once. However, its quick melee attack slams you with a hammer like Thump. It doesn't have the same bonkers range as the hammer, and for that reason, I have respect for the Mutilator. The Fuel Rod Spanker. HS didn't have the resources to add in the old fuel rod gun, so they repurposed the rocket launcher into a funky hybrid that spits out fuel rod rounds. The last banished weapon added is the Vestige Carbine. This is a Covenant carbine in all but name and appearance. Apparently, its design is based on a cut beam rifle from Combat Evolved. It may be another precision weapon, but I think I love it. Central to the whole campaign taking place on a Halo ring, Forerunner weapons are included. The Sentinel beam returns, but its mechanics have changed up a bit. It's now a weapon that has an ammo pool as opposed to a charge. It no longer overheats, but now you need to reload it. Otherwise, you kill enemies the same way you would with other Sentinel beams. The Heat Wave is a shotgun in a similar vein to the Scatter Shot, where its hard-light rounds fire in a fixed pattern but can ricochet off walls and still be lethal to enemies and yourself. Its two firing modes allow the spread to be either vertical or horizontal. Pro tip, switch to vertical fire to finish off an enemy with downed shields. The Forerunner weapons are rounded out by the Cinder Shot. The Cinder Shot is like a grenade launcher, but it has a pseudo fly-by-wire mode when zoomed in. You can guide the shot to its destination, preferably a bad guy. It can also stun you if you're hit by the blast. Having good depth perception is a must when wielding this. Though that's it for the base weaponry, HS added the legendary weapon variants from the campaign in Season 3 for use in matchmaking and Forge. They also made it so the weapons' looks are overridden by player customization, so I reset their coatings to standard issue. The Longshot AR has improved accuracy and damage at the cost of a smaller magazine. The Breacher BR deals more damage and fires faster, but has a smaller magazine and lower zoom setting. It's tuned for close-range combat. The Impact Commando has a higher ammo capacity and does more damage, but has a lower zoom and higher spread. It's a bad gun for bad players. The Striker Sidekick is a flat-out upgrade over the stock Sidekick, possessing 2 more rounds, tighter spread, and higher damage. The higher recoil is negligible. The Convergence Bulldog has a higher drum capacity and tighter spread, increasing its effective range. This is actually how a real steel shotgun operates. The Flexfire Sniper trades range for ease of use. It adds 6 more rounds to a mag for a total of 10, fires faster, and has a significantly more generous bullet curve. This comes at the cost of reduced zoom and lower overall damage. The Pursuit Hydra has improved tracking abilities, locking onto targets faster. However, each round travels slower. The Spanker Tracker is for fans of the Halo 2 rocket launcher. You can lock onto targets with this. Otherwise, it's unchanged from the stock Spanker. The Rapid Fire Pulse Carbine, as the name implies, fires significantly faster and deals slightly more damage. The Unbound Plasma Pistol fires 3 bolts with each trigger pull and shoots faster. The Overcharge now fires 6 bolts at once. The Pinpoint Needler is an upgrade over the stock Needler with more ammo, stronger tracking, and requires fewer needles to trigger a super combined explosion. The Stalker Rifle Ultra doesn't align itself into the sniper role again, instead opting to act more like a marksman rifle. It deals less damage and has lower zoom, but it fires faster and has reduced heat buildup. The Vestige Carbine renders this variant obsolete. The Purging Shock Rifle fires 5 bolts in succession instead of 3, with each bolt being more likely to chain to other targets. The Calcine Disruptor is much more of an alien revolver than the stock one. It has a 7-round capacity, but fires more damaging rounds that cause area of effect damage on impact. The Riven Mangler is more in line with the Halo 3 Mauler, firing 3 shard spikes with each shot. However, it deals less damage and has a lower firing rate. This one sucks too. But not as bad as the Ravager Rebound. This oaf now fires projectiles that bounce before detonating, with its overcharge also able to bounce. It makes a bad gun even worse. The Volatile Skewer is much like the normal skewer, but the rounds have a delayed explosion if they don't hit an enemy. You can lull them into a false sense of security. The Rushdown Hammer is even more OP than the normal hammer. It gives you faster movement speed and higher jump height. The Diminisher of Hope is Escherum's personal gravity axe from the Halo Infinite campaign. It has larger area of effect damage and increases movement speed. I find this to be less consistent than the other hammers because it doesn't seem to work half the time. Then again, it's an axe and not a hammer. The Duelist Energy Sword is for those who love sword fighting in the game. It gives you faster movement speed and a higher jump. The Elite Bloodblade is the blood red energy sword wielded by Jaga or Domnai in the campaign. It's functionally identical to the normal sword, but it disintegrates enemies you kill with it. The Infected Energy Sword is also a reskin of the normal sword, but takes on a darker red and makes hissing noises when idle. The Arcane Sentinel Beam has a lower ammo capacity but burns up targets faster. The Scatterbound Heatwave gives the Hardlight projectiles stronger tracking when banked off surfaces. The Backdraft Cinder Shot's projectiles now splinter off into a cluster explosion. This thing shreds enemies. Now for the grenades. The Frag Grenade is the classic pineapple surprise around the corner. Grenade spam used to be off the charts in the early days of the game, but thankfully that got nerfed within a year. The Plasma Grenade is the sticky blue ball that gives you blue balls if you get stuck. The Spike Grenade returns from Halo 3 and it's just as spiky as ever. Just make sure someone doesn't put a wall in your way. The Dynamo Grenade is new and will give you shock therapy if you're not paying attention. Like other electric weapons, it can EMP vehicles. Limited use equipment makes a comeback with different equipment scattered around maps. The Grapple Shot is the grappling hook that was heavily featured in the lead up to the game's launch. It's scientifically proven that grappling hooks make games better, and using the Grapple Shot is no exception. You can use it to hook into walls for fast traversal, to fish for weapons and equipment, to stick onto enemy Spartans, or to grapple jack vehicles. This is the most fun ability to use. The Thruster is like the Thruster from Halo 4 and Halo 5. It gives you a short thrust in whatever direction you're moving, useful for escaping from sticky situations. The Repulsor fires a pulse of gravity that deflects projectiles. It can't save you from small arms fire, but it can reflect things like rockets and hardlight.
Return to sender.
You can also use it to perform a repulsor jump to get to areas you couldn't otherwise reach. Hitting a Spartan with one of these raw can also deal physics damage if they hit a wall, being able to pancake a Spartan if their health is low. The drop wall is similar to the Halo 3 drop wall, but it's of human design and you can shoot through it. Shots are absorbed on the opposite side, but individual squares of the shield can be disabled, punching holes in the wall. A little extra insurance never hurt. The threat sensor attaches to walls and pings enemies in its radius every few seconds, making them visible to allies. Useful for anticipating where enemies may push. Or you could stick it to an allied player and have them scout ahead for enemies. Overshield and active camo are now equipment, but have to be manually activated. This is by design, as you have a chance to kill the enemy who's about to activate it and steal it for your own use. I don't need to explain how these two work because they're classic gear. The Threat Seeker is a threat sensor reverse engineered by the Banished. When tossed, it bounces once and then pings enemies in its search radius. It was mainly made for competitive play as it only pings once. The Shroud Screen is what I call an obfuscation field. It's a bubble that blocks visibility and any players hiding in it will be invisible to the radar. It's sort of like a smoke grenade in Counter-Strike, in which you can use it to confuse the enemy as to where you really are. Do note that this is not a bubble shield. You can still die while hidden inside. The Quantum Translocator is a teleportation device. When activated, it creates an exit portal that you can warp to at the press of a button. Your portal changes every time you warp, and you can actually telefrag players with this. Just make sure your exit portal isn't over a bottomless pit. Finally, there's the Repair Field. This acts similar to the Regenerator from Halo 3, but it comes with a bonus of repairing vehicles in the field. It can also revive downed players in firefight and attrition modes. It can also be stuck to vehicles to act as a makeshift ambulance. While the equipment is fun to use and most of the weapons feel good, I'm not the biggest fan of Infinite's sandbox. There's too many precision weapons due to HS's desire to bring Halo back into the esports spotlight. It clearly didn't work because HCS isn't happening in the year of Campaign Evolved, and because most people, myself included, didn't care about HCS. So why the hell is the retro-inspired sandbox so fixated on weapons that can headshot? Most of the new weapons added by HS were precision weapons, with only one weapon added in that I can classify as a fun weapon, that being the Mutilator. A lot of weapons from the Bungie era had utility that made for interesting combat and fun custom games. But I guess I'll never know what Halo Studios was thinking when they made all these weapons. Customization in Halo Infinite is simultaneously the best and worst it's ever been. There are tons of different armor pieces available, from helmets and attachments to shoulders, chest plates, gloves, wrist items, torso, left leg, and knees. However, Halo Studios made the odd decision to go with armor cores. Each core has its own set of armor customization, with most armor pieces exclusive to specific cores. As of December 2025, when I finished playing, these are all the cores. Mark 7, the default armor at launch. Mark 5B from Halo Reach. Yoroi, a spiritual successor to Hayabusa. Rakshasa, which appears to be cobbled together from whatever the Spartan could find. Eagle Strike, a Dieselpunk World War II styled set. Chimera, a cyberpunk suit that resembles the nanosuit from Crysis. Mirage 2C, based on the elusive SPI armor. Hazmat, aka Osteo, a hazmat suit. And Mark 4, the armor from Halo Wars that everyone loves. Originally, cores had to be unlocked through their respective battle passes and event passes, with Mark 5B being locked behind the premium tier in Heroes of Reach. However, come the winter update in 2022, all existing cores were unlocked with future cores granted to everyone, free of charge. Still, players were unhappy with the lack of cross-core customization. HS tried to make up for that by adding the ability to use any helmet on any core. Then they extended that to visors and shoulders. Then, well, they gave up. All this mess could have been prevented if things had been cross-core from the start and if cores hadn't existed at all. Sadly, it was too late because trying to rewrite how armor works would likely cause the game engine to unravel. Plus, Microsoft laid off all those guys. Even with the inherent restrictions of the core system, the cores themselves look great for the most part. The exceptions to me are Chimera and Hazmat. Chimera never really looked good to begin with, and Hazmat just doesn't quite do it for me. Maybe because I was hoping to use a crowbar as a melee weapon to get choked by barnacles. My personal favorite has to be Mirage because I love its design and attachments. I will never take this tack belt off. Sadly, if you're looking for a Mark 6 core, you're SOL. There's only a couple of helmets and armor kits based off of Mark 6 from Halo 2 and Halo 4. I'll get to that can of worms in a bit. If you were hoping to color your Spartan how you wanted, you can kinda do that, but not really. HS ditched traditional color customization in favor of coatings. These are reminiscent of shaders from Destiny, made by ex-Halo developer Bungie, as they consist of colors, patterns, and levels of wear and tear. You're given a basic color palette of coatings with a couple more unique designs to start with, and you earn more by progressing through battle passes and buying them. It only took HS 4 years to add in that purple and orange color combination I was desperately missing. However, they never added basic black or white to the list of starter coatings. How am I gonna cosplay as a Star Wars Stormtrooper now? Customization isn't strictly limited to your Spartan, it also applies to the weapons they use. Weapons can receive their own coatings, have their model changed, have a sticker applied, and have a weapon charm attached to them. Ah yes, nothing says murder like having a keychain of a rat attached to my rocket launcher. Originally, you could only customize the UNSC weapons, but they added Banished and Forerunner weapons in 2025. Finally, you can have that bright blue gravity hammer you never wanted. Vehicles get in on the fun too, however this is mainly limited to coatings and the rare vehicle model. Only the Warthog and Razorback got models that included run-flat tires and bull bars. Only UNSC rides can be customized. Banished vehicles don't have the same luxury. I didn't really bother with a vehicle customization due to how unbalanced vehicle combat is in the game. Oh, and there's your Spartan's personal AI, but they never shut up by default, so I'm not talking about them.
Hey, wanna know 117's real name? Pick me and I just might tell you.
All this customization is cool, you might say. So, what's the catch? You have to buy more than half of all customization. With real money. Since Infinite's multiplayer is free to play, Microsoft has to make their money somehow. Not that they're lacking in money and need more of it. If you were going into this game without spending a single cent, you were going to be cursed by FOMO and envy every time you entered into a match. To this day, people are still being whales, spending their cash on $30 armor bundles and maybe another $30 on the battle pass, and skipping all tiers to get instant gratification, only to get whooped the second they enter ranked. While money can't buy skill, it can buy most of what I'd consider to be cool cosmetics. The problem is that there's no alternative way to buy most of the cool crap. I mean, they did add Spartan points as a currency you earn by playing, but stuff like the Combat Evolved Mark V kit and Halo 2 Mark VI kit still require you to spend real money to buy credits to buy the kits. 1,000 credits is roughly $10 US, which means that CE Mark V costs about $22. $22 for an armor kit for Mark VII when it could have easily been a core. Same with Mark VI. I had no respect for the poor souls who paid for these kits. Also, you had to buy the color white for 3 years. That's not the case in the final operation anymore, but that's near the end of the pass. Oh, and I guess Mark VI from the campaign is in here, and you can unlock it just by playing the game, but the caveat is that you have to reach hero rank in your career ranking. Even with the XP gained per match being double now, I was not able to reach hero rank in the month or so I played. Then there's the battle passes. Never expire, my ass. Even with each battle pass being accessible after the end of seasons and operations, you have to buy them if you didn't complete them or didn't even start them. That means spending more money that I didn't want to. My criteria for spending money on games is that the developer has to have a good track record, which HS doesn't, and that I don't spend more than full retail price on optional content, between $60 to $70. I've spent a little over $20 on the game, and that's because I was able to stretch my $10 from the other battle passes. HS added a return on investment in the season battle passes, granting 1,000 credits from the premium track. Then they stopped and replaced the currency with Spartan points. Although I let the 1,000 credits ride on other passes, there were no more passes with credits to re-earn. So I spent my credits on the Heroes of Reach premium track right before I took a sabbatical from the game for the second time. By the way, if you're on the free track of a pass, you get shafted. Not surprising for a free-to-play game. It used to be worse though, because earlier passes had tiers where you got absolutely nothing on the free track. Hey, if you didn't regret buying all those cosmetics with your hard-earned cash, then keep enjoying it. I only wish there were more items that could be earned without spending cash. There are a few ways to do so. 1. Grind matches for Spartan points to use in the exchange, only to realize you won't be able to buy the Halo 5 armor bundle anytime soon. 2. Grind matches to level up the battle passes so you can access and pray you get something on the free track. 3. reluctantly accepting awareness and pride coatings that were granted by HS over the game's life, bringing awareness to polarizing days or months. No returns, no refunds. They made the last of these coatings optional, but I have every other one. I actively try to avoid bringing up politics on my channel, so the least I can say is this. Wearing one of these coatings is like having a kick me sticky note stuck to your back. Except for the AAPI coating, that actually looks cool. Even after spending $20 on the game, I still feel like I got ripped off. I should have listened to Guybrush Threepwood's advice. Oh boy, this is the part where I get to criticize Infinite for more than half the video. The Halo Infinite multiplayer experience is a mess. While it walks like classic Halo, it doesn't talk like classic Halo, if that makes sense. The aesthetic of the game at launch bore a greater resemblance to Bungie-era Halo. Forerunner structures got rid of most of the floaty bits from the Reclaimer saga. Old weapons took on a refined form of a classic look. New weapons fell in line with the art style instead of being jumbled polygons. Armor wasn't overly detailed and was mostly pleasant to look at. Infinite's art style was a near-perfect blend of old and new. The gameplay side, however, Infinite could not free itself from sprinting ever since it was introduced in Reach, but this is an argument that's been going on for 16 years straight. If it's coming back in Campaign Evolved, then I guess it's time to shut up about it. Thankfully, most of the advanced mobility stuff from Halo 5 did not return. Thrusters were demoted to equipment again, and things like Spartan Charge and Ground Pound were gone, which is good for controller players since they don't need to buy an elite controller to even play the game at a high level. Things like Sprint and Clamber were carried over, but all that out-of-character Spartan stuff in 5 was replaced with equipment. I've already talked about equipment earlier, so I'll say this. The shift to equipment birthed more creative options in the combat loop. There's things like fishing a power weapon with a grapple shot, performing a repulsor jump, or sticking a threat sensor to a teammate and using them as bait. However, all that utility and creativity goes to waste when you're actually fighting. The combat loop is just as one-dimensional as the rest of the HS Halo games. It puts too high of an emphasis on guns that can get headshots, as well as quick time to kill for all weapons. I've always referred to this as the precision plague, mainly because I suck at getting headshot kills. I was hoping for more unusual weapons throughout the game's life. Instead, we ended up with DMR minus scope and another Covenant carbine adjacent gun. Now, that's not to say they didn't try to make bizarre weapons. The Mutilator is one of the most creative power weapons HS ever made because it's a double-barreled shotgun with a mini gravity hammer. I never expected the Banished to have a shotgun that felt so human to hold while still feeling alien at the same time. Everything else they added was either lazy or only made for the pros. So, I don't like Infinite's arsenal mainly because I suck at using the weapons you would actually use to get kills with. I'm not a pro player by any stretch of the imagination, I'm a freaking casual. I like doing the goofiest crap possible when I can, but Infinite does not allow for that in multiplayer. At least not in the normal modes. Halo Infinite really wanted to sculpt its players into competitive players, and I think they got carried away. All matches feel like it's all or nothing. To quote the movie Talladega Nights, if you ain't first, you're last. Each match, Jeff Steitzer either tells you if you won or lost, or tied, even in free-for-all modes. No more game over. I ended up committing an act of heresy and muted all voices as a result. Winning feels like the best thing ever, losing is the worst. I hate that mentality. On the topic of winning, you'll often win your first multiplayer match, then proceed to drop your next 10. Infinite uses skill-based matchmaking, or SBMM, to keep matches engaging. On paper, it does what it's supposed to. It matches you with teammates and enemies of around the same average skill level to make you feel like you're evenly matched. In practice, you're not going to have a high win column in your career stats. We as humans are predictably unpredictable. Some players would rather quit than stay aboard a sinking ship, something even I'm guilty of. Sometimes you take an early lead, but then you or your team start choking and then lose the game. Sometimes you get steamrolled or are the ones steamrolling the other team. Sometimes you get the dreaded join in progress where you're thrown onto the aforementioned sinking ship. Or sometimes a player just fails to load and you're left with a bot that's as adept at killing as a stormtrooper from Star Wars. Steve Polge deathmatch bots in Unreal Tournament, these ain't. Adding to most of my matchmaking woes is the unstable netcode. Desync continues to happen despite numerous changes and even a complete overhaul. While the netcode isn't as bad as it was at launch, you'll still occasionally find yourself stuttering through a wall or developing jerky movement. However, the matches I did play with high lag still felt controllable and wasn't entirely my fault. One of those matches was because my brother was downloading a game on the same network, and the other was because the multiplayer servers went down for a few minutes. Even in that match, everyone was able to finish the game to the end. I'm starting to think that the Azure server architecture wasn't made for games if the netcode was so bad that it needed a rework. What really sours the quality of matches is how few players there are left playing the game. Sure, players come and go. Not everyone is going to keep playing. Just ask me. I quit this game twice. According to data I found on ActivePlayer.io, there are about 12,000 players playing the game daily. By comparison, Helldivers 2, the other game I quit, reels in around 40,000 active Steam players between story beats. The estimate of players playing Infinite is for both console and PC players combined since the game has crossplay. Sadly, us mouse and keyboard enjoyers are an endangered species in Halo, which took up around 2,000 active players on Steam. In spite of Microsoft's push to get Xbox games onto other consoles, Infinite has not been considered for PlayStation systems. Not that it would salvage the player count in any meaningful way. Then again, Killzone's been dead for years. On the bright side, I rarely ran into cheaters and hackers. Guess that's a pro to playing against mostly console players. My frustration with the game was further compounded by all the weird design choices made by Microsoft and Halo Studios, even before the game was released. The multiplayer shifting to free-to-play was the biggest culprit, since the majority of cool cosmetics require you to spend real money on them. Armor cores and coatings were consequences of the shift. This boiled down to having to buy some armor pieces that could only be used on one core, as well as buying the color white. Again, Microsoft is not starved for cash. Why do they need to aggressively promote poor spending habits? I'll give you a hint. It's because of a game that rhymes with Fortnite. Unlike Brain Rot the video game, you don't get to dance on corpses of your enemies and commit other cringeworthy atrocities that aren't even listed in the Geneva Convention. Thank God. However, and this is me overthinking things, the customization falls into the pitfall of being at odds with the art style. Call of Duty is guilty of this, and Halo Infinite is no different. Nothing says murder like having a charm of a wait a minute, I already used this joke. How about this? You can make your pistol look like two sticks and a rock. No one in your platoon will want to share that.
Say what?
Then coatings range from cool to you wish you could afford it to pop culture references to whatever the hell these pride coatings are supposed to mean. Some of these coatings stick out like a sore thumb. My second biggest issue with Infinite isn't greed or the fact that my teammates are brain dead. It's the gravity hammer. To put it quite bluntly, pun intended, it's a free kill weapon. It didn't behave like this in Halo 3, it didn't behave like this in Halo Reach. You couldn't run at enemies blindly and swing away. Here, you can. Why does it kill from 10 feet away? This is bullshit. Yet, despite all of that, despite how BS the hammer is, despite how few players are left standing, and despite how much money this game desperately wants me to spend, it all pales in comparison to the buggy, unstable, slip-space game engine powering all of it. It's been established by now that Infinite's game engine is another fork of the old Blam game engine that's been powering Halo games and Stubbs the Zombie since the 90s. This fork traces all the way back to Halo Reach when Bungie were handing over the reins to the studio formerly known as 343 Industries. This game engine has been iterated on over the years, adding in things like shadow maps, screen space reflections, and ray-traced lighting. However, this tired game engine has been pushed to its limits. Supposedly, most of the people who developed this game engine were only contract workers. Hardly anyone was hired by Microsoft to maintain the bloated codebase, and it showed in the final product. There have been bouts of corrupt geometry, ragdolls either get stuck in the walls or in a perpetual freefall, and TAA is on at all times with no way to turn it off. This isn't Unreal Engine 5. Oh no. I've also run into instances of game performance degrading during a match, but not in a way like other modern games. This only seems to happen in PvE modes with enemy AI. I was playing the Infinite version of Survive the Undead, and by the 10th wave, the game was really starting to hitch like crazy with each AI enemy killed. and by the 33rd wave, when I picked up a power-up that killed all enemies on the map, my game froze. While only 32 AI units or so can be on a map at any given time, it seems like the game isn't destroying dead enemies, as in completely removing them from the match. That might be why, as games of Firefight or Survive the Undead go on, more and more stuttering and hitching occurs when enemies die. I started having this issue around the Banished Honor operation, but I was also having stuttering in PvP around that time. So while that issue was fixed, HS may not end up fixing this one. On the topic of unfixed bugs, I can't hear anything directly behind me. This has been an issue with the game since launch, and it's caused a few cheap deaths here and there. Conversely, it's also led to me getting a few cheap kills. It's like the rear channels of surround sound aren't being used, which means either I get assassinated or someone behind me shoots at me and I can barely hear any gunfire. For years, their fix was to try other sound modes in Windows or to await new audio drivers. Neither of these workarounds worked, and they still won't fix it. Despite all my criticisms of the buggy-ass game engine, going back and playing multiplayer has been mostly smooth sailing in the performance department. Granted, I have a fairly hefty GPU and I upgraded my RAM way before prices skyrocketed. I was barely getting 60 FPS at the lowest render scale on a mix of low and medium settings on my old GTX 1660 Super with 6 gigs of VRAM. Now, with my RX 7600 XT and 16 gigabytes of VRAM, I can hit a near constant 60 FPS on high settings with ray-traced shadows on high, while super sampling from a little over 1440p. What I wasn't able to achieve, however, was hitting 180 FPS to match up with my new monitor. Oh well, I'll take a stable 60 any day. I just wish I could say the same for Xbox One and Xbox One S players. Infinite wasn't meant for these base-level last-gen consoles, and the game runs at an unstable 30 FPS target. However, I am not working for Digital Foundry. I'm not an expert on console performance, nor do I own an Xbox One or Xbox Series console. And for GPUs with less than 4 gigabytes of VRAM, forget about it, sweetheart! At one point, you could boot the game with a weak GPU, but you weren't going to have a smooth experience. Then the game just stopped working for those users at one point. This led to at least one of my friends being unable to play the game, leading to him rage quitting the game. As a matter of fact, most of my friends rage quit the game due to all the issues I mentioned. Constant bugs and glitches, crappy netcode, and not being able to boot the game, let alone play it on a potato PC. We all stopped hosting custom game nights in Infinite and retreated to the Master Chief Collection. But even that wasn't without its flaws. And so, me and my friends got burnt out on Halo. Some of us became Helldivers, others became racing drivers, and I went back to derping around on 2 Fort in TF2. The one game that I had met many of my friends in was now the one game we didn't want to touch. A journey of 10 years was cut short in its 5th year, though you could argue it stopped in 2024. A promising return to form was undermined by free-to-play trappings, a game engine held together with duct tape and tears, overly sweaty gameplay, and developer support prematurely drying up. And that's a shame, really. Playing through the multiplayer gave me glimpses of greatness that weren't fully realized. The equipment led to more creative combat encounters. Most guns looked and felt great to use. The mechanics weren't overly complicated, and most performance issues I experienced the last time I tried the game have mostly been ironed out. The lack of proper dev-made maps is noticeable, but there are dozens upon dozens of maps forged by the community that either bring back classics or have the potential to become future classics, even if most of those maps are the pit. If anything, I got burned out on the PvP and wanted to do anything but fight other players. I spent a good chunk of my 30 days playing Firefight and other PvE modes. Not only did PvE grant a boatload of XP per match, but it also served as great stress relief. Sometimes that's just all you need, something fairly low stakes to blow off steam. And when I wasn't playing the multiplayer, I was forging. Ever since I picked up my first Lego brick, I've always wanted to build worlds. While I still can't build whole worlds in Infinite Forge, I can at least try to craft a small slice. It's just unfortunate that playing Infinite again reminded me of why I stopped playing the game twice. Even after all these years, I still don't feel that Halo Infinite is complete. Efforts were made to correct the course, but it sadly wasn't enough. And once this video is out in the wild, I'll have hung up my CQB helmet for good. And with Campaign Evolved on the horizon, I'm ready to pass the torch to the next generation of Halo fans. This has been Squiddy the Kid, signing off.